My name is Curtis Tomlin, and after a decade of pounding the pavement as a police officer, I finally felt like I was starting to build something solid for my family. My wife, Sarah, and our 2 kids deserved a little luxury, a refuge from the daily grind. That's why we decided to invest in a jacuzzi for our backyard. It wasn't just a hot tub, it was a symbol of hard work paying off, a personal oasis where we could unwind and connect. The bubbling water, the soothing jets, it was supposed to be our little slice of paradise. But paradise, as I soon discovered, attracts snakes. From the moment the jacuzzi was installed, a nagging sense of unease settled over me. Little things, almost imperceptible at first, started to occur. The water level would be inexplicably lower than I remembered. Pool toys would be moved from where the kids had left them. A towel, neatly folded on the patio chair, would be crumpled on the ground. I initially chalked it up to my kids being forgetful or the wind playing tricks, but the feeling persisted. I started paying closer attention, meticulously noting the water level before leaving for work, checking the placement of objects around the jacuzzi. Each time, my suspicions grew stronger. Something wasn't right. Someone was using our jacuzzi when we weren't home. My gaze kept drifting towards the house next door, the one occupied by Karen. Karen wasn't just any neighbor, she was the embodiment of suburban entitlement, the type who complained about leaves falling from our trees and reported our garbage cans being left out for an extra hour. Her eyes always held a certain icy disdain when she looked at me, a disdain that seemed to intensify whenever I was in uniform. It was more than just a personality clash, it felt different. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but I knew, deep down, that Karen was the most likely suspect. The only thing I needed was proof. So, I started watching her. I parked my patrol car a few blocks away on my lunch break, just so I wouldn't be noticed, and used my department-issued binoculars to scan her property. I even invested in a discreet, high-resolution security camera disguised as a birdhouse, strategically placed to overlook the jacuzzi area. I had to be sure. I needed irrefutable evidence before I could confront her. The thought of her using my family's jacuzzi, her hands touching our things, without our permission, it made my blood boil. This wasn't just about trespassing, it was about disrespect, about violating our space, about a blatant disregard for our privacy. It was time to take action. The security camera footage confirmed my worst fears. There she was, Karen, in all her entitled glory, waltzing onto our property like she owned the place. The footage from the first week was the most infuriating. She appeared relaxed, sipping a drink from a glass she brought with her and soaking in our jacuzzi as if it were her personal spa. The most infuriating part of the footage was how relaxed she was, as if she had every right to be there. The following days showed a pattern, a routine. Every time she thought we were gone, she'd slip into our backyard, test the water with her hand, and then luxuriate in the bubbles. She was there almost every day when I wasn't home. The reality of the situation was a gut punch. It wasn't just a fleeting suspicion, it was a deliberate, calculated act of trespass and disrespect. The violation felt deeply personal, a wound inflicted on my family's sense of safety and security. I replayed the footage over and over again, each viewing fueling my anger. I imagined her smug satisfaction, her complete disregard for our property, and the thought made my hands clench. Adding to the infuriating discovery was that she was there since the day the jacuzzi was installed. She had been doing this almost every single day without us knowing. Had she done this to other black families in the neighborhood? I felt a wave of conflicting emotions. As a police officer, I was sworn to uphold the law, to remain impartial and objective. But as a husband and father, I was fiercely protective of my family. The rational part of me knew that I should follow proper procedure, file a report, and let the legal system handle it. But the primal part of me, the part that had seen too much injustice and prejudice in my career, wanted to unleash my fury on her. I wrestled with the urge to confront her directly, to give her a piece of my mind, to make her understand the depth of her transgression. But I knew that would be a mistake. It would only escalate the situation and potentially jeopardize my career. I needed to be smarter, more strategic. I resolved to remain calm, to channel my anger into a plan that would hold her accountable for her actions. I knew I couldn't let this go unpunished. Not just for my family's sake, but for the sake of principle. Allowing her to get away with this would send the message that her actions were acceptable, that she could disregard the law and violate our privacy with impunity. It was about setting a boundary, about asserting our rights, about protecting our peace of mind. It was the beginning of a new chapter of her life and she didn't even know it. The anger was still simmering, but I knew I needed to channel it into something productive. Revenge couldn't be a blind act of rage, it had to be calculated, legal, and most importantly, effective. I spent hours brainstorming, weighing different options, and considering the potential consequences of each. I talked to Sarah, carefully explaining the situation and seeking her input. She was understandably furious but urged me to be cautious, reminding me of my responsibilities as an officer. I was sick and tired of this woman and she didn't even know how much trouble she was in. I decided to focus on a plan that would both catch her in the act and inflict a consequence that she wouldn't soon forget. The key was to make it undeniable, to leave no room for her to deny her actions or play the victim. So I acted like I left for work like any other day, I made sure to leave at the same time and even drove my patrol car like I would on any other shift. I knew she was watching me from her window, waiting for the opportunity to strike. As soon as I was out of sight, I doubled back, parked around the corner, and crept back into my house. My heart was pounding as I watched her through the living room window. It didn't take long. Within minutes of my departure, she emerged from her house, a smug look plastered across her face. She scanned the area, making sure the coast was clear, and then confidently strode onto our property, heading straight for the jacuzzi. This was it. This was the moment. I took a deep breath, steeled my nerves, and prepared to execute my plan. I grabbed the container of bright red, non-toxic dye that I had carefully prepared the night before. It was a harmless substance that would temporarily stain her skin and clothes, a visual marker of her transgression. It was a simple, yet effective way to humiliate her and expose her actions. As Karen lowered herself into the jacuzzi, a wave of satisfaction washed over me. The months of planning, the hours of surveillance, the simmering anger, it was all about to culminate in this moment. This was the payback she deserved, a consequence for her blatant disregard for our privacy and her entitlement. And it had been the most rewarding experience ever, I had never felt this relaxed in a long time. I waited a beat, allowing her to fully immerse herself in the warm water and savor her stolen moment of relaxation. Then, I burst out of the back door, container in hand, and marched towards the jacuzzi. My face was a mask of controlled fury, my eyes blazing with righteous indignation. Karen's expression shifted from smug contentment to stunned disbelief as she saw me approaching. Her eyes widened, her mouth gaped open, and a flicker of panic crossed her face. She tried to scramble out of the jacuzzi, but it was too late. With a swift, deliberate motion, I poured the entire container of red dye into the water. The once clear water instantly transformed into a swirling vortex of crimson, enveloping Karen in its vibrant embrace. She shrieked in surprise and outrage, sputtering and flailing as the dye stained her skin and clothes. She was trapped, stuck in the bubbling red mess of her own making. "Trespassing, Karen," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "Enjoying our jacuzzi without permission? How does it feel to be caught in the act?" She was speechless, her face a mixture of anger, embarrassment, and fear. She tried to protest, to deny her actions, but the evidence was undeniable. She was literally swimming in the proof of her transgression. I watched her squirm, reveling in her discomfort and humiliation. This was more than just a prank, it was a symbolic act of defiance, a reclaiming of our space, and a powerful message that her actions had consequences. It was a simple yet effective act of revenge. Karen was now completely submerged in the crimson-colored water, her clothes and skin stained a shocking shade of red. She was frantic, her eyes darting around as if looking for an escape, but there was nowhere to go. She was trapped, both physically and figuratively. I can explain," she stammered, her voice trembling with a mixture of fear and anger. "I didn't. I thought." "Thought what, Karen?" I interrupted, my voice cold and unwavering. "Thought you could just waltz onto our property and use our jacuzzi whenever you pleased. Thought you were above the law. Thought you could get away with violating our privacy and disrespecting our family." I didn't wait for her to answer. I pulled out my phone and dialed the police department, requesting backup. "I have a suspect in custody for trespassing," I announced, my voice clear and professional. "Subject is currently detained at my residence. Need immediate assistance." As I waited for the police to arrive, I watched Karen struggle to climb out of the jacuzzi, her movements awkward and clumsy. The red dye clung to her skin like a second layer, highlighting her discomfiture. She looked ridiculous, a caricature of her entitled self, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. When the patrol cars arrived, sirens blaring, Karen's eyes filled with horror. Two officers, both colleagues of mine, approached the scene, their faces a mixture of confusion and amusement. I explained the situation, showed them the security camera footage, and pointed to Karen, still dripping red dye. They quickly assessed the situation and placed Karen under arrest. She protested vehemently, claiming she was being unfairly targeted, but her cries fell on deaf ears. The officers read her rights and escorted her to the patrol car, her head hung in shame. As they drove her away, I felt a sense of closure. Justice had been served, not through violence or aggression, but through careful planning and decisive action. Karen had learned a valuable lesson that day, a lesson about respect, boundaries, and the consequences of her actions.